think when you pay attention to the way people speak, you can learn a lot about them and the words they use. And I think people also use words unintentionally sometimes, that they don't understand the meaning that it carries.
Elise Kirsten is the former online editor of Getaway Magazine and one of the travel industry's leading writers. She makes a living through words, and today she's going to show us why words matter in business, because they're the power of life and death within our tongue. We're going to talk about hope, we're going to talk about courage, and refusing to give fear a seat at the table. And near the end, she asks a question that will truly test your heart. Would you give up your business today if Jesus asked you to? Let's go. Elise, I'm so delighted to have you here on the KingdomPreneur Podcast. You are the first of our clients for 2026, and a massive welcome. I wanted to start this off to find out, who's Elise Kirsten? Like, where's her heart? What does she do? What should the world know about you that they don't currently know? I don't know. What is it that's hiding?
Thanks, Rob. I'm delighted to be here. It's really exciting. So who's Elise Kirsten? Well, on the surface, a travel writer. That's what I do for a living, and I love it. I help clients with their communication in the travel industry. But at heart, yes, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, but my husband's in labor law. I've got two daughters. The one just graduated with her BCom law, and the other is working and figuring out what direction she wants to go in. She's finished school years ago. So it's just delightful to be, part of a family. It's really, one of God's great blessings. And of course, a Christian. I love Jesus, love God, love the Holy Spirit. And I think that guides everything in my life. I'm not always obedient, like we all, we make lots of mistakes along the way. We do our own thing and we can be selfish. But yeah, I love to draw people's attention to the beauty in the world. I mean, when I go for my walks in the morning, I'll go for a run, I'm noticing the sunset, I'm noticing the leaves in the sky, and I'm always saying to my daughter, my husband, look. Or I'll take a video clip and I'll post it on Instagram, because God's created just such an incredible world. Everywhere you go, there's so much to marvel at. And I think that's something that comes through, I hope, in the travel writing, just that wonder, about his creation, in its creation. I love conservation as well. So getting into those wild spaces, and there's a lot of amazing people doing amazing work, just to improve, not improve our planet. God made the perfect planet, but to restore and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So I see over your career, you've been an editor of Getaway Magazine and all sorts of things. What have been some of the career highlights that you've had, placing words against experiences and bringing them to life through words? Like, what are some of the highlights, the places, the things, and the people that you're like, that stuck with me forever?
Yeah, there's so many. I really have been blessed to lead an extraordinary life, and God's taken me from a place of hoping and dreaming, and there's where He really has brought many of my desires to life. And He's so good, because He doesn't owe us a thing. But some highlights. So I started out with, as far as the magazine journalism, with Ride Magazine, mountain biking and that, and then moved within the same company to Leisure Wheels 4x4 magazine. And I kind of just fell into that. So I wasn't a petrol head or anything, but had some really fun experiences. I mean, that was great. One of them was driving 4x4s in the desert in Oman. So it was the launch of the Amarok 3-liter V6, and that was incredible. And I know you've got an Amarok too, because you mentioned it. So yeah, I do love driving 4x4s. And we got to test drive like the Hilux at the racetrack, and the Ranger Raptor was also lots of fun. So that was fun in that way. And then at Getaway, I was the online editor working with the print editor. And of course, you travel to different places and meet interesting people. Many highlights. I love St. Helena was something that was recent and quite interesting. That was after Getaway. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. With Getaway, Singapore was interesting. But there's so many. I mean, I could go on about travel and the people that you meet and their different culture, and just getting to know people that it can be a brief exchange in a hotel quickly, but if you were just sitting in your home, you wouldn't have had that interaction. And so that's special. Yeah. So I could go on for ages. So there's lots of highlights, but there's just a few that came to mind.
I've got a curious question. So, I used to own an adventure travel business many years ago, and I've got two places on earth that if I could just take every human being to, I would take them to. And they're obscure places. One is a wild camping area in the middle of the mountains and forests, lakes and rivers in Norway, almost on the Swedish border. You've got to drive through a farm on a dirt road to get to it, and it's just it's mind blowing. And the other one is the Saska Valley in northern Italy. I don't know if you remember the James Bond film where he bungee jumps at the start off the dam wall.
Yes.
It's the valley above that dam, and the water is like sapphire blue in its color, and it's of this little river, and the history goes back to Rome and Roman times. I mean, it's just mind blowing. If you had one or two places on earth that you could just go, I'd love to take somebody there. Like if it was only one place or two places I could take them to, where would you pick?
It very much depends on the person, I guess, because they don't always love what you love. But the Namibian desert is amazing as well. I know it's just across our border, but I do love remote places, and our bushveld as well, in whether it's South Africa, or across in Botswana, Zimbabwe. There's sub-Saharan bush is amazing. Personally, also, I know this sounds a bit cliche. Everyone wants to go on a tropical island holiday, but I love scuba diving, I love snorkeling, and I love being in the water and the ocean, and Seychelles is incredible. So that's maybe up more people's alley. And then the remote spaces, the desert. I love deserts. Oman as well was incredible. Just being under those vast night skies, and but I think my heart is in Africa, and so I'd probably go with Namibia.
So you obviously have written about many of your experiences, or all of your experiences, I don't know, a vast majority of them over the years. And it strikes me that you use words, and then we have the word. And it strikes me that there's so much power in word that can be wielded.
Yes.
How do you help people or view that yourself? Like what rattles through your head as you're like the pen is a sword? What is it people should know about these words that we use, and how is it that you view them?
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I think when you pay attention to the way people speak, you can learn a lot about them and the words they use. And I think people also use words unintentionally sometimes, that they don't understand the meaning that it carries, and what they're saying over themselves and over the environment. And I think I tend to pay attention to that. And sometimes people have a poverty mentality, and it will come through the words that they speak, or a negative worldview, and everything's about, the government this, or, it's who you're blaming and why you're blaming people. Are you blaming people? And how can you reframe that? And I think if you're seeing what God has done and what he is doing, then how can you not, and not saying we don't have problems to address, but again, do you want to focus on them all the time? And I think that's again where I do have a slant towards the positive. And I think, how can you not as a Christian? There's so much media that's negative all the time. People are bombarded with the news and the news cycle, and it's driven by fear. And God doesn't drive us through fear. He leads us with love. And so how can you do that in your words, and in choosing what you speak about and the way you frame it? And I think even in the context of articles, each word it's got not just its inherent meaning, but it's almost got it carries with it a sentiment and a feeling, and it can evoke emotions. And so it's so powerful. I mean, God literally used words to create our earth. So, if he did that, then I think we need to be careful. And I'm speaking to myself, because, the chattier you are, the more easy it is to trip up over your words and to say things maybe in an emotional moment that you don't mean. So I just like to be aware of the words I'm using, and I do pick up on what other people say, and I think they're not always aware of what they're filling the environment with.
It strikes me as a travel writer, you've got the ability to speak life into somebody's business or the experience they offer other people. I mean, firstly, that's a gift, right? The ability to do that for somebody. How do you help a business who's got an experience they offer? I don't know, maybe it's a lodge in Botswana, for instance. They've got an experience that they offer. They often speak about it, it's in one way, that, as you said, it's through their own emotions, through their own lenses. They've just had a bad meeting with the bank manager, and they've got to go and write the sales copy for their website. And that bad meeting with the bank manager spills into that website copy, right? And by accident. How do you help guide them to actually go and represent themselves, I suppose, as Christ would represent them, so that somebody then landing in that article or on that web page or wherever it may well be goes, wow, this is the place for me? What's the process that you take somebody through?
So yeah, when working with clients, I think if they have drafted something, if they've written something with it, like you say, a sale page copy or whatever it is, it's just that outside perspective that, sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, or you don't have the expertise or the skill. So having someone that can look from the outside and immediately spot the inconsistencies, or I'll give you an example. One of my clients, she's got a luxury boutique travel business. And so safaris in Africa tend to be, there'll usually be a season where people like to go. It's the best season when it's drier to view animals. They tend to hang around the water holes, and the bush is not as green and thick. But then in the green season, the safari lodges still want to attract people, and it is the birding season. You can still see amazing wildlife, but it tends to be a lower season, and it's cheaper. So, more affordable rates for the lodges. And she happened to mention that, writing something, and she's like, oh, and we can mention that it's more affordable. And just to direct her attention back to the fact that she's appealing to, high net worth individuals where that isn't really a consideration. And when you position your brand as to sell on price as opposed to the experience, then you're lowering the whole value of, and it was just being able to, and she knew that, but she just got caught into what the salespeople say, like, oh, it's cheaper. And it's not to say that people with a lot of money don't consider price, but that's not the positioning and the selling point. So that's an example of an outside perspective. And then in my own writing, I try and put people in the moment. And when you write something, what will happen generally is you will stick with the cliches that are in your head because you've heard them, like a bucket list. It's been used over and over and over. I have not found something to replace that, though, very interestingly. So because it sums up beautifully, things you want to do before you die. But people will, like, every town is nestled at the foot of, foothills of this hill or mountain. And there's certain cliches that come up. And then it's a challenge of thinking, like, how can I really give a person a feel about what this is and steer away from those cliches? And I'm thinking of this hike I did in St. Helena. So it's called, we hiked to Lot's Wife's Pools, and there are these jagged rocks on the edge of sort of a cliff face, and you've got the Atlantic, and this is on the wilder side, not the sheltered side. And they actually called the Gates of Chaos, which is beautifully named. And then, I was writing about it, and I thought at night we were heading back and it was getting darker and we needed to get back to the car because we didn't have lights. And how do you describe the darkness that is going to, fall on this little dot in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean where there's, one little town on the opposite side? And I thought, what's the darkest thing I can picture? And I thought, maybe the inside of Leviathan's belly. So that was the way I described the dark. That was going to, it's not the typical. So that's how I think about things. And, how can I make it sort of evocative and bring people into the moment, that they really picture how dark this is going to be, or how light, or how beautiful, or how cold, how wet, what does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? So to just bring them into the experience using words.
I love it. I want to come back to words in a minute, but I'm well aware there's a lot of people who will watch this who have got a tiny business and they're trying to get it up and running, and they don't have the luxury of saying, hey, Elise, can you come write for me? Right? They don't have that luxury. What are your sort of, if you give them 2 to 4 points about, as you write about your business, consider this, what would those be for people, the sort of advice that could set them free a little bit to just step out from the rest of the industry? As I look in every industry, you look at, for instance, a financial services business. And I know that's not your game, but every brokerage, you go on their website and they use this, as you said, the same cliches, the same verbiage, the same, we are the professionals, the blah, 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 blah. And it all just looks grey. What are the sort of top 3 things or 2 to 4 things that could help people write in a way that doesn't make them look grey?
Humor's one. If you're naturally funny, I think that's great. Or, if you have to work it a little bit, people like to laugh. So, and you might think, oh, but this is a business, but depending on the business, and not even, I think you want to set yourself apart, and there's different ways to do that. Sometimes the branding, it's about the colors that are used, that are, if every financial services is blue and green because those are the colors of trust, and that's what everyone's been told in, corporate branding, and you go with, purple and orange, and, it's going to set you apart. So it's I guess it's thinking about standing out. clear, concise. People tend to be too wordy. And I think just look at how you can cut your words down and still convey the same message. Because especially when people are reading online, reams and reams of text don't work. It's different for a narrative and a story, and people are going to relax and now they're going to read a travel article. But if this is a business website, you want to explain what you're doing and what you're about in the least amount of words that make sense. So I think that's something to consider. And then a resource that I'd recommend is William Zinsser's book it's called On Writing Well. If you want to improve your writing for yourself, read that book. It's great. And he shows every chapter is on a different, different maybe style of writing or thing that you might pick up in your writing. And yet he tells a story and he does it brilliantly. So, yeah.
I always think that if people write about who the business is as opposed to what the business is, or who the person is as opposed to what the person is, that starts to make it really easy to think about a unique differentiator between A and B, because obviously you and I could do the same thing, but if I was to write about who you are or you were to write who Rob is, we could do the same thing, but we'd appeal to different people and because of who we are, and it's really easy to start separating out.
Yeah, and just sorry on that point, the about page is the most read page after the home page. So you really do have to think about it. People are very curious about who the people are behind a business and what they stand for, and yeah. So yeah.
Tell me, God's led you into another writing path. There's a book project, and tell me about this message from God, this word from God, that's led you towards this project, and then take us down the rabbit hole of where this project is going to.
Yeah, so I'm writing a book on hope. Initially, I thought it was going to be on fear, on not being fearful, essentially. And we're living in a world, and they do tie in. Essentially, I think you can't be hopeful and full of fear. So if you're actively not being fearful, you're likely to be hopeful. But God's kind of shaped it and led me down this path, and it's been a very interesting journey of growth. And I think I don't see exactly where it's going to. I don't know the outcome at the end of the day, but he is our hope, and he's where all hope lies, the very core of hope, and not wishful thinking. And the book focuses on both scientific hope, so goals and pathways and agency, just to move from where you are to where you want to be, but undergirding that all is our hope in God, because really, what's the point if you don't have hope for eternity, if you don't know him? So yeah, it's a journey. Kind of broken it down into hope for relationships, hope for health, hope for your dreams, and hope for your finances. So sort of major areas that people struggle, and some of it's personal and some of it's other people's stories. I've come across some amazing stories. One of which I just quickly touch on is Hari Buddha Magar. He's just summited and the peak Mount, is it Vinson in Antarctica, the highest peak, the Seven Summits Challenge.
Yep.
He's a double above the knee amputee. So he summited Everest in, I think it was 2023. And now it's a world record. It's amazing. If he could do that, there's a lot that we can do.
It strikes me that hope is the medicine for fear. It's such a cool thing, because it's also a thing we have control to generate our own hope through taking action and finding opportunity for ourselves. It's a thing that's doable as opposed to just thinkable.
Yes.
Wow. What was the thing for you that got you to move from fear to hope?
I would say that, so personal story. My husband and I were separated for a year back in 2014, and I knew that God wanted to restore our marriage. And I also knew that I couldn't live in fear in any way. So anytime there were thoughts of, what's it going to look like on the other side of this, or, you go down rabbit holes, I just had to shut it off. It's that renewing your mind, thinking on his word, and just trusting him and having faith. And he did an incredible restoration, and I think we have far better marriage for it. But that was a journey of really just shutting it down, not allowing those voices to speak to you, not being controlled by them, but to just keep coming back to what God says, despite what it looks like in the natural, and So that is, one of the largest challenges, or that's certainly the largest challenge I've faced. And obviously it's a two-person thing, but it's and a three-person because God's involved. But yeah, I think yeah, and I don't think I think naturally I'm a bit more of a risk taker and adventurous and wired that way. So sometimes I look at people who are more cautious and it doesn't make sense to me. But obviously, they've their reasons for being the way they're wired, the way they are.
Everything's a gift and an opportunity to learn. We just sometimes don't like school, certainly from my experience. Tell me, I often say that we are the first Bible that somebody reads. Um, and you get to meet all sorts of people in all sorts of places. How do you go about being, what's your strategy for being the first Bible that somebody reads without taking the actual Bible over the head and like smacking them over the head with it and leaving them bruised, battered and blue from the Bible, as opposed to seeing and experiencing what it really is? What are some of the things that you do?
I don't think it's a conscious choice. I think it's just being who you are and being congruent and consistent. Um, Naturally in a world where people tend to swear a lot and you don't swear, they notice it. They do. And it's just who I am. Or sharing an encouraging word, or asking questions that when they have such a negative worldview that's clearly based in, driven by, like I said, this fear-driven world with the media and the news, they're just questioning that because in scripture that what they're saying is not true. And you just highlighting something without saying this is found in this chapter, this verse, you highlight a truth to them. Yeah. So in way back when I was at Ride Magazine, my boss was quite controversial and liberal, and so I sort of kept quiet, and I was new into this magazine business, and I sort of did my thing, and I just was who I was. And after a while, he said something about me being a covert Christian. So he picked it up. It took time, it struck me in two ways. Like, do I want to be known as a covert Christian? Shouldn't I be? It was a challenge to be a little bit more open about my faith. But on the other hand, there are definitely places and times where you don't want to be that Bible bashy. You're just going to put people off, really. And I think it boils down to respect, because just as you want people to respect what you believe and what the way you see the world to be, the other people would like you to respect their worldview, whether it's right or wrong, and get to know them. And through relationship, you can explore topics together.
Okay. So you're obviously you're growing your travel writing business. You've got your book you're writing. I want to know what it is that you would offer as advice to another Christian business owner. And the advice I'm really curious about is, as we wander around our day, there is so much like build your business like this, do it like that, maybe opportunities to get rich quick or do this or do that. And some of that you could find to be based in the Bible and you can go, oh, okay. And then other bits of it, you're like, my gosh, Jesus would never do that. That's like the last thing on earth he'd do. How do you navigate that growing your business? Because there's a tension between the world's advice and then what it is that Christ himself would do. How do you use a compass to go navigate your way through that? And what would be your thing that you could give somebody else to go and do the same?
Excuse me. Yeah, I think it boils down to trust, daily trust, and being in tune with the Holy Spirit. And we all make mistakes and no one gets it right, and we run off on it with our own ideas. And I love that verse, Psalm, I think it's 16:9. A man plans his ways, but the Lord orders his steps. And I feel like it's not like God's subverting our brilliant plans. It's more like he's rescuing us from our good ideas that are not God ideas, and just lining everything up and ordering our steps. So it's bringing it to God and asking him for specifics in your business, which is really incredible, because he answers, he cares. He's more invested in your business than you are. I mean, we don't always think like that. And but it's so true. And I've done that on numerous occasions. It's amazing how he does answer specifically. Sometimes it takes time. In fact, sitting here with you, last year I asked God, I felt I need a business mentor, and I started praying about it. And I went to a workshop in person here, and the woman, she had a lot of great business advice, but twice within the meeting, she happened to, in a joking way, but she said something about, You're not divorced yet. And it was kind of this, like, if you're going to build this great business and make lots of money, and if your partner or husband or wife is not towing the line, well, you might have to cut your losses. It was just like so like demonically inspired. I don't know that she even realizes that that was coming through. Like I said, I pay attention to words. And although that wasn't the bulk of her message, it was subtle. And so clearly we weren't aligned. And then God brought, well, what popped up on my feed was Eugene van der Merwe's workshop, which is not, it wasn't a mentoring, it was in sales. I went there, enjoyed that. And then your Kingdompreneur popped up and I went into the thing. And interestingly, when you presented, you mentioned Eugene was one of your clients, and it was just that trust touch point. And there were various other things. And God, so yeah, I felt like being here is an answer to prayer. It's the aligned and the right. And I didn't even know it existed. I didn't know what I was looking for, but God knew. So so ask God. Yeah.
It's funny how it all comes back to faith, like faith as in doing faith, sitting patiently until he shows you the thing or gives you the thing.
Yeah. But like you said, it's taking action as well. I went out to that workshop. I went out to the workshop. I was looking, but it's about being in tune as to when he says, this is the right way, walk in it,
I love it. I've got a few questions that I really love to ask you that I won't say left, but there's one in particular. And it's this. If you got to, and I know we can do this at any point in time, but if you got to go to a coffee shop and sit down and have a cup of coffee with Jesus, and you could ask him just one question, what would it be and why?
I think that it might be tempting. There's a whole lot of questions that would be tempting to ask. But if it had to be business, it would be very tempting to ask for strategies and frameworks and the next step. But I think if he could give me a glimpse, a vision of the people that my business would help in future and how it's going to help them, I think that would be a far greater motivator than how to get to the next figure in money or whatever. I think if I could understand, because I don't think I do, the plans that he has and how he wants to impact people's lives for his kingdom and for good, and to uplift them in some way that's meaningful and that makes a difference in their life. If you could just get a glimpse of that, I think that would just be such an amazing motivator to keep moving forward. Yeah.
So a glimpse into the future.
Yeah. It's a pretty good reason he doesn't give us that, but it would be tempting to ask. Well, yeah, sometimes he does, through prophetic words and all sorts.
Yeah, it's also that sometimes we're not ready to hear or see what the future is he's got planned for us.
Exactly. And I'd love to know what you would ask.
It's actually quite simple. And that is, what would you like me to do next?
The next step.
I have a habit of getting very far into the future. The 5 and 10 years, what next?
Yes.
And I don't think that's wrong, having dreams and goals and aspirations. But I think I said in one of our coaching sessions the other week, I can watch YouTube videos on sailing boats for hours. And that's one of my visions and goals for the future. But I'm really curious about what next. What do you want me to do today or tomorrow? Or what's the next? Like, I can kind of see what today, tomorrow, and next week looks like. But what after that? Is it really this that I think it should be, or is there actually like a do something else that you'd like me to do? And the reason for asking that question is I sometimes feel like I don't listen in prayer well enough. Like it's a communication, right? I tell myself I don't listen well enough. And so just to have Jesus sit there and say, no, do it like this, and always give me like the 5 bullet points, like no ambiguity, no interpretation, just do this.
Yes.
That for me would be and there's so many other questions, right? Like,
yeah.
How am I measuring up?
Well, you already know the answer to that. It's well done, my good and faithful servant, because, he sees us through Jesus. So.
But I think it would be the coolest cup of coffee ever. Can you imagine though the coffee shop if people start recognizing that Jesus is sat on the other side of the table from you with a cup of coffee in his hand?
Yeah. Well, if we could pick the coffee shop, maybe on St. Helena Island or somewhere remote.
Well, where you're the only people in the coffee shop. Which
exactly.
It's a selfish cup of coffee with Jesus. I'm not sharing.
Yes. I'll tell the rest later.
So as you look into the future of your travel writing, and I want to know the same for the book, but we'll get to the book in a second. If you could speak into your own life, where are the places that you would love to go and write about, or the experiences that you'd love to go and write about, or the people or the things? Like, what's the itch that you'd really love to scratch?
So definitely Antarctica. That is my number one destination. That is definitely. And I'm trusting in faith that I'm going to go. I don't see how right now, but I had a really incredible dream some years ago that I woke up in Antarctica. I was sleeping in a tent, and the cold from the ice underneath was coming through, and I woke up with a start. And I was in a warm bed, but it was so real and visceral, and I was like, I really believe I'm going to go to Antarctica, and so that is a place I want to go to, and I would love to write about. So that's definitely number one. The other places, but that's number one.
Well, I guess you live in the Western Cape of South Africa, so if you want to see penguins, that's quite easy. But to see them in their real environment, in the snow and the ice, is quite hard. Okay, so Antarctica and your book on hope.
Mm.
Where would you most like it to take you to?
Are you talking about a geographical place or a?
No, but no, I mean it could be anything, right? That could be a metaphor as well.
Yes, yeah. So I know that I would love to hear, and that's maybe why that question in the coffee shop, I would love it to help people, really, people who just need that getting to the next step. It's not going to solve your life's problems, but sometimes you hit a wall and that's the encouragement you need. And so it would be lovely to hear, to get feedback, and to just, wow, I was in this place and this book helped me get here. And I know it's, that's God, really. It's not Elise, it's just me being obedient to him. But hopefully it'll take me to some places as well, because I thought about that recently. I was like, maybe I'll get to travel with the book as well. I can't help myself when it comes to travel, but it's God's project, and I don't see exactly where it's going. So I just trusting him day by day as I move forward.
I love it. I love it. I want to finish off with our last question, and last thing is the next person I have this conversation with. What's the question you'd like me to ask them?
Give me a seckie. Okay, so would you give your business up tomorrow if Jesus asked you to? Would you be able to lay it down? Would that be a struggle?
Wow. Well, I can tell you from my own experience, I did.
Well done.
But
and was it a struggle? A wrestling match?
He kind of gave me no choice.
Okay, that helps in the matter.
The logical doors for several businesses that usually would be open for those customer wise and service wise and everything else, for no obvious reason. I mean, there was worldly reasons, but there wasn't obvious reasons. A whole load of them got shut, and suddenly you're like, what? And then doors towards KingdomPreneur got opened, and you're like, oh well, I kind of lose this opportunity in this business here with this customer group over there for no real reason. It just seems to have happened. And then here's some couple of Christian business owners who want to talk about it, but it's important that God's present in this coaching conversation. And I think that that's part of like God's methodology for steering the ship of us as a human. And I think if we observe the world, I think it's interesting, your hope and fear, we can just go and see the lack of opportunity of giving up this. But I think if we're truly observant, we can see that he's actually giving us the provision to go and do that thing that he wants us to do. And I think we're so focused over here on the lack. But when we shift that to, well, he's not going to leave me hanging with no resources to go do this. And I think it's about having that observation of both like the North and the South Pole, or the positive and the negative, or he's not going to set us up to fail.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you make a mistake and you going in a direction that's not his perfect direction, if you're doing it with that pure motive of following him, that's the ordering the steps part. He'll use it, so you can't go wrong. You can't really fail.
There we go. So Elise Kirsten, I want to thank you for being with us. I just want to bless you from me for everything you bring to the world, and the energy you bring into KingdomPreneur and our sessions, and how you bail me out when the world goes quiet and nobody wants to ask a question, and the very, very many things. And I want you to know that I think your book's going to overtake your travel writing, and I can't tell you why I'm saying that. And it's going to take you to places that neither you or I could imagine right now. But it's going to take you to those places, and I can't wait to follow what that is for you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Thanks. It's been great.